Brian, we have kind of had this whirlwind of information this week when it comes to that number 5 pick for the Jaguars. And it felt like Mason Graham for a really long time. And now it's Ashton Genty. We've heard some Jalen Walkers. We've heard some Ted McMillans kind of mixed in. In your opinion, what, if you're looking at that 5 spot, what makes the most sense for you and the Jaguars right now?
Well, they need guys who score touchdowns. They just don't have enough of them. Brian Thomas Jr., obviously, but Christian Kirk is gone. Evan Ingram's gone. Travis Etienne last year fell way off of his production that we had seen the 2 years prior. I think if there's an opportunity to add an elite player who scores touchdowns, you have to take that. And from everything that you've heard and everything that I've been told by friends around the league is that there are 3 elite players: Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and then Ashton Genty. And I spent time with Ashton yesterday. He's an impressive physical specimen. He reminds me a lot of Maurice Jones-Drew just in terms of his physical style, his body composition. And then if you've watched his highlights, you understand that he's a guy who has scored a lot of touchdowns. So that makes sense to me. If you don't stay at 5, if you get an offer to go back a little bit, then Ted McMillan seems to be the name that most people have associated with his franchise. Spent some time with him yesterday, too. Really long arms, big hands, tall guy. And the natural observation to make is, well, that could be the Mike Evans of Jacksonville. And obviously Liam Cohen had great success last year. So, I mean, with the new coach and the new general manager, we're having to make correlations between style of play and previous draft philosophy and what the players there represent. I would say at 5, though, it's got to be offense, because if you're going to win this year, it's going to be on the shoulders of your quarterback, not by improving your defense. I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't help, but this is the Trevor Lawrence show. And in order to get that up and running, you've got to give him a couple of weapons that score touchdowns.
Is that the Travis Etienne or the Travis Hunter show there, Brian?
Yeah, maybe I slipped. No, I don't listen. I don't know anything at all. Although, again, I'm name dropping all over the place. But most of the big names are here this year, right? At least guys in the top 5. And so Travis Hunter, I asked him, wide receiver, cornerback. Are you tired of the question? He said no. He said the answer hasn't changed. I'm doing both. And when you watch him, you think, okay, listen, he's probably the best all-around player in this draft. If you could swing a deal and go up, it's going to be expensive because the Browns have you over a barrel. Mm-hmm. But if that's the guy you want, you've got 10 picks, you got 2 3s, you've got 2 4s. Make a deal. See what you can do.
Brian, let's say the pick is Ashton Genty at 5. Where would you like the Jaguars to go with that 36th pick in the second round?
I'm such a best available player guy. It's been drilled into my head over 3 decades in this game. If the best available player is a defensive tackle, and this is a deep draft for defensive tackles, I'm told you can find them into the 4th round, then take the defensive tackle. But there's a cornerback need and a safety need, and that top of the second round seems to be where guys like Trey Amos fit. So this is going to sound like a cop-out, Lauren. I don't mean it that way. The best available player on the board. And if that's an offensive lineman, take that guy too. This team went 4-13 last year because they have substantial holes in key places. Name a position that you wouldn't want to upgrade other than quarterback and alpha receiver, right? You want to get better at all of them. So if you find a player that makes a lot of sense, it's hard to walk away from any player from this team right now.
Jaguar senior correspondent Brian Sexton joining us live from Green Bay, the site of the 2025 NFL Draft. Brian, let's phrase that question then a different way.
Okay.
What do you think, which of the following do you believe is the most underrated? No one's talking about this need for the Jaguars, but it needs to be addressed before day 2 is through. Edge, wide receiver, or the secondary? Because I think the defensive tackle, if for no other reason than the Mason Graham connection for the last month and a half, and the fact that James Gladstone was very vocal about the fact that they did not sign any defensive tackles because they want their rookies to get out onto the grass early. I think that one we've resolved that yes, at some point in time the Jaguars will have to address the interior of the defensive line. But which of those other 3 do you think they need to address before the end of day 2? The secondary?
The secondary. You saw this group last year. I mean, they gave up big play after big play after big play. I think there's some talent in that secondary. I'm really high on DeAndre Prince. I thought he deserved more time on the field last year, but he just couldn't break into the lineup. I think they've got some guys, but you can never have enough defensive backs that have the length, the swagger, the confidence to play the position. I hear great things about the kid from Mississippi, Trey Amos. I mean, if he's sitting right there, why wouldn't you be interested in that player? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say secondary is that, and safety is a spot that you got to get better at also.
Yeah, Brian, I've been kind of banging the table about that secondary, too. I'm very underwhelmed by the safety room in general, and now we're going to look at this point in time, what Jarian Jones is going to be able to do across from Tyson Campbell. Tyson Campbell's dealt with some injuries the last couple years, so I do think that is a big focal point. I wanted to ask you about this. I saw a quote from a Jason Leeser. He's he covers the Bears up in Chicago, but he yesterday asked Ted McMillan if he had talked to Jacksonville at all, and Ted's response was, "Man, I don't think anybody talked to Jacksonville unless I'm tripping. Am I wrong? Nobody talked to Jacksonville." I'm guessing that's just more so everything's been kind of held very close to the chest here in Jacksonville.
Well, that was my question, actually. He just took off with it.
Okay.
I asked him, have you heard from Jacksonville? When you're a reporter covering a team, the first thing you do when you get a chance to get with these guys is ask them what they've heard from the team that you cover. Everybody does it. Bears, Packers, Lions, everyone. So I knew that they hadn't done 30 for 30 visits, but I thought maybe they had talked to him at the draft, and then guys kind of sneak around there. There's no moratorium on talking to these guys. They just didn't bring anybody in. His reaction was vociferous. I mean, he exploded with this great big smile. He goes, "Man, has anybody heard from Jacksonville? Nobody's talked to Jacksonville." And his reaction just was he has heard his name associated with this team, and not just in the media. Agents talk, scouts talk, and he had heard all of that, but he hadn't heard from the team. And that's the way they're doing things. And James Gladstone explained it at the luncheon last week. They like to keep as much under wraps as possible. And you guys know, and this is a business about people. It's a human business. And so it's tough to keep everything secret. But if you don't bring 30 guys in, you know what happens? You don't get a lot of speculation. Hey, they brought this guy in first. They brought this guy in last. They brought this guy in, and they didn't bring any other at his position. They can't speculate about what you're doing. And so it gives you some subterfuge. It gives you a little cover for what you're doing. And I thought what James Gladstone said also was they don't want to have recency bias. They don't want to think, well, the last guy we talked to was so impressive. We were blown away by his answers, and just have that starry look in your eye. We got to have that guy. Kind of like if you're going out to buy a car, the last car that you test drive tends to be the one that you want the most because you had the best experience with it. Kind of that same mentality. They wanted to have as detached a process as possible in terms of getting the grade together and fully evaluating the player on who he is, on what he's done, and then what you think he can do, and not let much emotion get into it. I just thought it was funny that Ted's response was so emotional. It's like nobody's heard from Jacksonville.
Does it concern you at all about that interview side of things? Because I know I heard Leon Searcy say yesterday he's not a big fan of them not having that full-on interview process with these guys because they do a lot of times take a good amount of things from those interviews.
They rely on their scouts, and they rely on the people that go and dig on these players. They talk to teammates and the guys that work in the strength and conditioning space and the equipment staff. I mean, there is a lot of information gathering on these players. Now, the one-to-one personal side of things, what a lot of teams have found, and we found it in Jacksonville through the years, is guys come in and they're very rehearsed. And you know what it's like in a job interview. You want to put your best foot forward. So you rehearse it, you practice it, you say the right things. They don't think you're going to get as much information about a player, as much of a feel about a player when you fly them in and put them in a suit and take them around and introduce them to everybody, and it feels so corporate. So it doesn't really concern me. What concerns me is, do they know what they want? Do they have a process, a method for getting the players that they want in their space? And from everything I have been told, and granted, I've been told by people that I know, and I trust them, but is that these guys have come in with a plan. and they know exactly the kind of player that they want. You may have seen earlier there was a report out about how more and more teams are looking at how much guys love football, factoring in NIL, and guys come in with money. Shedeur Sanders is a great example, right? He comes in with all the money from his childhood with his father and the money that he's made in Colorado, and does he love football, and does he want to play football? That's a really hard thing to try to decipher. So you've got to have a very specific list of criteria of personality traits that you're looking for in a player that tells you who this guy is. And Leon thinks you get that in the interview, and James Gladstone thinks you get that in the analytics. And so we're going to find out, aren't we? Because this is the first go-around with the analytics driving it. You guys may have heard me say this, but if they've gone from the old-school traditional football model to the hedge fund model. These are young, aggressive, data-driven, unafraid coaches and scouts who are willing to turn conventional wisdom on its ear. It's worked in places, and now it is full force in Jacksonville. So I'm kind of excited to see what they do tonight.
Brian, how would you compare Ashton Genty's Player Tribune article and how confident he came off there to you actually getting to talk to him yesterday?
I didn't see the Player Tribune, but he has this – listen, the guy's got $1 million smile. And some players don't like it when you're doing, sort of the semicircle around them. You guys have all been in that. They kind of, they step from left foot to right foot, and they look over their shoulder, and they're trying. Man, he stood right in there. His feet were planted on the ground. He had a huge smile on his face, and he was looking for the next question, not for wanting to disappear. He may have played at Boise State, but it doesn't seem to matter at all. The game, the moment, this here being on the biggest stage in the off season, it hasn't affected him. It's not too big for him. So his production is second only to Barry Sanders. I mentioned that. I said 2,600 yards. He goes, I'm only the second guy to ever do that. And I went, okay, you know who you are and what you've done. I liked it. It resonated with me. I want guys who want the pressure. I want guys who know that it's about production over everything else when you're in professional football. And he certainly embraced that. I like that. It seems also, and I'm just judging this, based on talking to him for 10 minutes. He loves football. He loves the moment, and he wants to be great. Those were all things that I took away from the conversation. So if that's the case, if he's there at 5, I would be completely comfortable with them taking him.
Brian, before we let you go, I do want to just circle back to the trenches, kind of give a primer, if you may. Offensive lineman you spoke to yesterday up at the NFL draft in Green Bay. Defensive lineman, i.e. Mason Graham, if there were any others that were on site. Were there any that you spoke to that you said, if James Gladstone says that the definition of intangibly rich is whatever I think it is, and that is the goal, is to bring in quality starters who are intangibly rich and will elevate the ecosystem, were there any that jumped off the page to you in that limited interaction?
Well, I only talked to 2 men.
No! And, there he is. Okay. Your call dropped briefly there, Brian. If you could just start from the top.
Okay. I will tell you that I only talked to 2. I talked to Mason Graham, and he's very quiet. The intangible that I took from him was the size of his forearms, which are bigger than most people's calves. I mean, this is a guy who wrestled in high school and was a very good wrestler in California. And he's wide. He's not tall, but he's quiet. And he answered things in 3 and 4 words. So I couldn't tell the intangibles, and it wouldn't be fair for me to suggest that he's not intangibly rich, because maybe he is. Will Campbell, the offensive lineman from LSU, huge. I mean, big guy. I know he's been knocked for his arm length, but he's got broad shoulders and big hips, and I mean, he looks like an offensive tackle. And he was great. I mean, you could tell that he played in a winning program, that he knew what expectations were. He didn't seem too scripted or rehearsed with his answers. He was able to go from questioner to questioner and remember the question, and even got guys' names. I thought he was terrific. So those 2 guys, both of them will go in the top 10. There weren't any other offensive linemen here, and the other defensive linemen were from Texas A&M, and I never got anywhere near those guys. So, just as a aside, it started pouring in the middle of the very limited media time we got. So I got Ted McMillan, Hunter, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, and that's about it.
Hey, Mia here, and thanks so much for watching 1010XL Jaguars. For even more coverage of the Big Cats, be sure to subscribe to 1010XL Jaguars.